Hello and welcome back. Thanks for joining us. As usual, this is Becca going by Nightcat or Nightcat's Meow when online in most places. And welcome back for another week dealing with Linden scripting language. This is going to be a bit of an unusual week, and it's something I hope to become a little more common as time goes on. But we're actually going to be addressing somebody's code issues directly off of the Discord group. This request comes in from the Great One Jay. Round of applause. Yay, Jay. He also sent me a copy of his code directly in World, so pay no mind to that. He also sent me a copy of his code directly in World, so I've gotten a chance to see what it is, go back and forth a little bit, figure out exactly what the problems he was having was. What he's trying to do is create something that will go through and display from a list of keys, the actual name, res date, and online status of a number of individuals. And the problem he was having seemed to be that it was not always sending him the correct information for the correct people, and things were getting jumbled up. This wasn't obvious for somebody else running it, but when he compared their data, it turned out that some of them were scrambled. He had an interesting approach wherein he had 3 separate data server calls with their own keys. The trouble is data server calls don't always respond in the exact order of things, which means if something started to reply back to one or another of those, they may have gotten out of order or jumbled up or something like that. I suspect that was what was causing him his issue. In Jay's code, he had the 3 separate calls that would, with each with their own unique key for the data server call, a set delay to wait in between sets of calls, and a little incrementer to move down the list of keys he had for checking people out. I have a couple of ideas where it wasn't quite working correctly, and I'm going to build one from scratch so that I can show him and anybody else who has need to do something similar a working way to do this. Jay, if any of this doesn't come out correctly this time, message me back again. I'll figure out what I did wrong, and we'll get this working for you one way or another. To anybody else, if you have specific code problems like this, go ahead and drop them in the Discord group. I'll have a link for it in the description on the video. If I flake out and forget to put it in there, poke me in the comments and I'll fix it. You can also check back a couple of videos to find one where I remembered to put it in. I'd like this kind of workshop-y effect to become a little more of a common thing. All right, so the first thing we're going to need is, of course, the actual list of keys. Now, in my personal testing, the third one tended to not work, so I'm removing that one for convenience. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to need to have a placeholder key to handle the data queries. Next, we're going to need a placeholder for tracking which key we're at. You could blame all of my algebra classes for assigning random numeric placeholder as X. It's not necessarily, what people consider great code work, but it just makes sense, and this is, quick and simple, sufficient. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create an actual test run for the data server itself. Oh yes, we're also going to need a holder for which key we're using. So key who equals get owner. Great way to test it. Pop this open here. Request agent data. to go with ID who. And which data? We're going to start with data names. We're also going to actually set a category. So we can subdivide out what we're dealing with. Name. Almost forgot a semicolon. I've been doing a lot with Visual Basic, which doesn't use those. It's been breaking some good habits of mine. Well, I guess they're not essential habits in Visual Basic, but they are here. Since I changed that. Which I almost forgot. There. If what equals name, say 0. What equals data born. So born. Oh, I see why it was off color. Had an extra quotation mark beyond what was actually needed. Born. Wow, I am not with it tonight. Had to close that bracket and properly secure each of these inside their function. Anybody who caught that I was slacking a little bit there, good on ya. What is my channel coming to? And since we see data born, contrary to what we might expect, is a string, we don't need to do anything funny to format that. And online, online. Actually, all that is going to function very differently. If integer data equals true, because you see data online produces an integer which is a Boolean. Since data doesn't default to being read, it will default to being read like a string. So we have to tell it that in this particular case, it's going to be an integer, because that's how Boolean is treated. It even tells you it right there on the wiki, integer. So if it's equals true, then is online. else the target avatar is offline. This will just go through this part right here. We'll go ahead and test to make sure that we're actually reading all the data correctly. So let's run that first. There we go. Me, first resident 2006, currently online. Now, we want to go through and set this to read from the provided list. So instead of going through all of this, we're actually going to provide a separate function for reading the list. And it is going to have who equals list to key, and I believe it's the list first, then what place on the list, but let me double check. Yep, source, then index. So in this case, the source was his avatar list. Comma, and the first item would be 0. We're going to move these up to here. Take these out of here. Next. Okay. Now it gives us information on the first one in the list. But we need it to go through and dynamically pick who on the list. That's what we were putting the placeholder control integer x up here for. So what we actually want is x, we want to start x equals 0. Then, after we run all this, x equals x plus 1. That'll increment it up a notch. And then we want to run next again. That should go through and give us each one in turn. And actually, I was doing one thing wrong down here. It cut off automatically. It stopped showing us stuff automatically because it ran out of things to do. But we need to put some actual brakes on it. And the way we do that is if x is less than get list length avatar list, then next else say 0, comma, done. Now, the primary difference between how I have this set up and the original version is the original version sent 3 different calls with 3 different key results. So he was, I'll give him this, properly filtering to make sure that each data call was responding to the correct thing, or at least make sure each response was responding to the correct data call. But with the timer event in there, any slowdown at all potentially backed the entire works up, and things were not necessarily kicking out the responses in the correct orders. This time, each data query responds and clears. In fact, if you wanted to give this a certain amount of extra cleanup, what you could do is data query equals null key. What that will do for it is as soon as it checks to see that the data query and the query ID match, which, since we're only sending them one at a time instead of in a batch, should always be the case, it clears that, thus preventing any possible crossover. The other thing it does is you're certain that it's run each query before it runs the next one. It has to actually process what is the target's name before it even is sent the query for when was the target born. It has to process when was the target born before it even gets the query, is the target online? And then it processes that before it's given the go to start all over again. In this particular way, you're going through and making sure that each process is completed before you worry about the next process. So hopefully, Jay, that will solve things for you. And that'll be it for this week. So as usual, good day, good luck, happy coding. And remember, I try to have these videos out every Tuesday by noon Eastern Standard Time. So look for them then. The Discord will be there. I try to check it more often than I get to, but like I said, as I've said, things have been hectic lately. So as they're calming down more now, I'm getting back into the flow of things. My housemate is getting better. So all in all, things are going well. I should be getting back into checking things more routinely than I did for a little while there. So I guess that's it. Bye-bye.